Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous Intro to Rulerwork class. I'm Stephanie Sebbing and I love Rulerwork. It's one of my favorite ways to dress up a quilt because it makes you look like a lot better quilter than you are. At least that's how I feel about myself. Once you get the hang of it, you're able to create whatever shape you have a ruler template with, and it really opens up the possibilities for how fantastic you can make your quilts look even without a computerized machine, and even if you struggle with free motion quilting. So in today's video, we're going to go over some of the supplies that you need in order to get started with it. We've created an entire course for this with a pattern where you're going to be able to work with each different technique and each ruler that we're working with, so that way you are able to really get a lot of skills down, and then you can mix and match those in many different ways to create looks on quilts that are different every single time you sit down to your long arm or your home sewing machine. We're going to go over the items you need now. Some of it is a little different whether you're working on a home sewing machine or a long arm, and I'll cover those differences. I'm going to start with the things that you absolutely need though. So we've developed a pattern to go with this. It actually is our pattern from our original quilting class, our Intro to Free Motion Quilting. We're using the same pattern. You can do it where you assemble the top first, or you can do a quilt as you go method. Either way, when you're finished, you have these 10-inch squares that we're going to practice each technique on. And when you're done, you'll have a completed quilt. So you'll have something that's actually done that you can show off and reference back to when you're trying to get ideas for what your next quilt is going to be and what you're going to do with it. And I don't know about you, but I love having an actual finished project for a class that I've taken rather than a stack of samples, because what are you supposed to do with those? Just take up space in your sewing studio? That's no fun. So you're going to want to grab the pattern, and that pattern is free whether you buy our entire ruler kit, the 5-pack to go with this, or the quilt kit to go with it. Either one of those that you purchase, you'll be able to get that pattern for free over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. So that's step number one. Get your pattern, grab a quilt kit. The quilt kit contains everything you need for your top, your binding, your batting, and your backing. So it's a really good deal. It's absolutely everything you need to go with it. And there are a slightly different yardage amount, whether you're working on your long arm or you're gonna do quilts as you go. It's a little bit more efficient fabric-wise for the quilts as you go one. So make sure you check that out. And we have 4 different colorways that you can choose from over on our website. I've got the orange one out here because that's the one that I'm going to be sewing on the sit-down machine here for you guys today. All right, the next thing you're going to need is you're going to need a ruler foot. This is a ruler foot. What makes it a ruler foot is it has a circle going all the way around. So your needle is going to be right in the middle of that. So when you're stitching, as long as you have your ruler in contact with the outside edge of your ruler foot, you're always going to be exactly a 1/4 inch away from the inside of that ruler. Now, what ruler foot you need is going to be determined by what sewing machine that you have. If you have a long arm, you're going to want to get that straight from your long arm manufacturer. If you have a domestic sewing machine, you likely can get it from your sewing machine manufacturer. But if they don't make it, there are universal ones that you can purchase. This is a universal one for a low shank machine. The shank is the metal bit that comes down that you attach all your feet to. So it's important to know whether you have a low, mid, or high shank if you're going to go get a universal. But no matter what you have, go to wherever you purchase your sewing machine and you'll be able to grab something from there. If you got your machine from a big box store, chances are it's a low shank machine, but check your manual to be certain. Now, these are a lot of times are metal, sometimes they're clear, but what's important is that it's a full circle going all the way around. So again, check with wherever you purchased your machine in order to grab one of these. The next thing you're going to need are rulers. Now, we put together a 5-pack where if you get all of them, you get 10% off of our rulers. These are the ones that we're going to use with the course. If you have something similar already in your ruler stash, you certainly can use that, because you also can buy these a la carte if you want. But each one is going to teach you something different. So you can go and decide what it is that you are already have and what you might be able to work with. One that we're going to start with is Slim by Angela Walters. This is a really good one for doing straight lines. So we're going to do some straight parallel lines. We're going to do some outlining with this. And then we're also going to create some triangles within triangles with this to add a little bit of extra dimension. So if you already have a ruler that has a nice straight edge to it that's meant for the long arm, go ahead and use that. One thing that makes these rulers different than the ones that you would cut fabric with is they're all 1/4 inch thick. And so when you are working on the long arm with it, it's not going to be hopping up and down on it, and you're going to be able to keep that right next to it. So it's about twice the thickness of what you would cut your fabric with. So you want to make sure it's that thicker version that's meant for ruler work quilting. The next thing we're going to work on are arches. These are really fun to use. They work great inside of triangles, and they also can create really fun shapes within blocks as well. We're going to be using Archie from Creative Grids, designed by Angela Walters. And this one, again, it's 1/4 inch thick acrylic. And if you have a low shank machine, I'm going to show you guys how to work it so that you're always working on the side and the front of your foot, so you don't have to worry about making sure you have a low shank ruler to go with your low shank ruler foot, because you can't always get that. And I don't want you guys to be limited by ones that only come in that low shank section. So we're going to work with both here, and it will work out great. We're also going to learn how to do some fun curves. We have a whole section where we're looking at other shapes, and this is one of them. You can really create some fun designs with this just by creating the waves and then also by echoing it in different ways. And you'll want to keep the packaging for this because they always have really great examples of some things you can do with the rulers you might not have thought of before. Smiley is the one that we're going to use to create our arcs, and also to create our arcs inside of triangles and diamonds. This one has a really nice arch here and here that we can use in order to create those lovely little shapes with. One ruler that you might already have if you're a long armor is the 4-in-1 by Natalia Bonner. If you have that, then you do not need Slim and you do not need Smiley. You'll be able to do what you have with that. I use that a lot when I am working, but it is a little too big to do on my domestic sewing machine. So that's why we're going to be using the smaller versions for this course. The last ruler set we're going to use is circles. So circles are really fun to add, and just like these other ones, you can combine them in ways to create really cool templates. Now, one thing about this is I really love my Handy Quilter half circle templates, but they're rebranding these. So we were able to get the last of them that are in existence, and they've currently temporarily discontinued them. So if you ordered early, you're going to get a set of these. If you ordered later, or you are seeing this for the first time, you're like, I want to do this, we are replacing it with a set of full circles. So when you watch the long arm version of me doing the circle tutorials, you're going to see me use this set. When we switch over to the domestic sewing machine, the sit-down sewing machine, I'm going to be using the full circle set for that one, because you can use both of them. The reason why, when I was first purchasing my ruler set and I wanted to have curves, I picked the half set, is because it's less expensive, because you're only paying for half of the acrylic. So that's why I chose the set that I chose and why I originally chose it for this. But unfortunately, they're taking a pause on making this, and so it's not available at this time. But this will work if you have this. It will also work with the full circle set that we're going to be replacing it with. Both are great. If you already have a circle set, you will be set with that as well. You also are going to want to have some marking tools. So we're not going to actually make blocks to go with this quilt because we want to have the focus be on the quilting, not on the piecing. So what we are going to do though is we're going to mark off some blocks on there. So we're going to mark things like triangle blocks, diamond blocks, 60-degree triangle blocks, straight lines. And so you're going to want some marking tools to go with that. I really like my friction gel pens. They come in a lot of colors. And then I also have this Soline chalk pencil. And that's what I use on my darker prints that I can't see as well with the friction gel pen. Now with one like this that's so bright, I probably would be just fine with a black friction gel pen, and you probably will never see it. But some of the darker ones, the darker blues, the darker teals, if you choose one of those kits, you're going to want the white chalk marker to go with that, or you're going to have a hard time seeing where you're supposed to be using as your pretend block lines. All right, let's talk about thread. Whenever I'm sewing or quilting on my domestic sewing machine, my sit-down everyday sewing machine, I use Arfil 50 weight. And for this course, plain white is perfect because you want to be able to see what you're doing. When you get to a point where you're trying to blend it, that's when it's nice to have the whole rainbow of thread colors. But for this one, we want to be able to see what we're doing. We want a thread that's not super linty, so we're not contributing to the amount of fuzz that's going to end up in the bottom of your sewing machine from quilting on your home sewing machine. This is a great one to work with, and I find that it is really buildable when you have to travel. When I'm working on my long arm, I find that each long arm company kind of has its thread that it behaves the best for. For mine, I work on an APQS Lenny, and I find that the Glide 40 weight poly works the best for me. I used to swear by cotton all the time, 100% cotton all the way. But the more I got into doing more advanced quilting on my long arm, and especially the more I got to building thread, and you'll learn what that means. A lot of times when you're doing ruler work, you have to travel over a previous stitching line in order to get to the next place without having to break your thread. So sometimes you're going over the same line 2, 3, maybe even 4 times. And so to have a thread that you can really build on without it looking really clunky and chunky is really important. So that's why I really like the Glide, and that I think is absolutely fabulous. Again, I do the 40 weight and the poly, and it has a little bit of a shine to it. It's really great. I'm just using a really light color. For this one, I use my Cool Gray 3 because it showed up really well against all of the backgrounds that I was working with. Again, you just want something that's gonna stand out so you can see what you're doing, you know where you did well and where you need to work on a little bit more to get the technique. So go for that, but use whatever thread your long arm likes. You all know which one that is. There's lots out there. This is the one that I love and that my machine also really behaves really well for. The last supplies we need, one of them is a must-have. If you have a long arm and you're trying to do ruler work, you need to have a ruler base. The long arm is only this wide. And so if we were to try to do ruler work on it, our ruler is going to be flopping all over the place. But when you have this long arm base, it slides over the top of it, and then it extends your work surface. So that way, when I have my ruler, you can see it really slides nicely all over this. And I'm able to get a lot of movement, and my ruler is always going to be nice and flat, which helps us get really great lines. Mine is from Hartley, and they make them to fit a lot of different machines, but check with your machine manufacturer because they may make their own to fit your specific machine, or they may also stock ones from Hartley or another company that makes them, but you definitely want to get it from wherever you purchased your long arm. If you are working on your home sewing machine, it's really nice to have an extension table. So this compartment box slides right off, and then my extension base goes on over the top of that. You can see it really extends my quilting surface by quite a bit. So, I mean, coming back, it's not too much, but I definitely have more space back here, and I have more space to the side. This is great anytime you're doing anything like putting on binding, quilting on your home sewing machine with free motion, but especially with long arms, this is going to be fantastic because it's really going to allow you a lot of space to move your hands around and be able to not have that ruler flopping all over the place. You can get these from your machine manufacturer, and there also are companies that make them to fit your machine. So Steady is one of them. Now, of course, the holy grail is having an actual table that your sewing machine sits in and everything around it is flush with the surface. That's fabulous, but I don't even have that, and this is my job and my profession. But they are absolutely fantastic if you have a specialized cabinet. That's the holy grail. And the reason why is because even with something like this, when you're working on your home sewing machine, it's not going to be that big of a deal when we're working with our little block samples. But if you're doing this on a big quilt that's already all put together, there's some weight involved there, and sometimes a lot of weight. And it is going to be falling down the sides of this. And so anytime you can keep everything flush with your tabletop surface, especially if it's a large tabletop surface, then you're really able to just move everything around nice and easy, and it's going to be a lot less tension on your body in order to get the quilting results that you're looking for. All right, so those are the big things that you need in order to get started with Rulerwork. I absolutely love Rulerwork. Like I said, it makes me look like a much better quilter than I am because I can get consistent, perfect results, almost perfect, every single time I go around, and I just have to keep the ruler foot in contact with my template every single time. Next up, we're going to actually get started sewing. We're going to have some really simple straight lines to start off with. We're not going to do anything too crazy to get going with. And for each demonstration, you're going to see me working and talking while I'm working on my sit-down sewing machine, the domestic sewing machine that many of you work on at home. And then you're also going to see footage of me doing the exact same stitches on the long arm. There's a little bit of difference in between them, but for the most part, it's a pretty similar situation. And so you're going to be able to get a lot out of it no matter what machine it is that you are working with. Make sure you get all the supplies over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. And until next time, happy quilting.